We're delighted to be here to talk about building the pipeline. Building the pipeline, the future of family medicine. And here you are in the United States. You've declared yourself the Family Medicine for America's Health, the future of family medicine 2.0, with a great, big, hairy, bold objective of approximately a third or more of graduates of MD programs going into family medicine. Because that's what you need. In fact, Barbara Starfield might even argue that it should even be bigger, maybe closer to 50%. And you know what? In Canada, we're starting to have noises about maybe it should be 60%. But that's a different story. So by the end of today's session, you will be able to, number one, describe the key elements of a strategy to increase the family medicine presence in the MD curriculum and attract more students to the career of family medicine. Two, develop a brief but powerful action plan for your own next steps to make these changes happen. Three, create opportunities to engage and nurture medical students who have made the decision to pursue family medicine as a career choice. So this is us most recently. So back in the early 2000s, we were hanging around 25 to 30-something%, and that was actually low for Calgary. Calgary was created along with 3 other medical schools in the late 60s because there was a shortage of doctors, particularly family doctors in Canada, and every Calgary medical student knew they were supposed to be thinking about family medicine as a career. But by the early 2000s, we had suddenly become more of less of a family medicine-friendly environment, and the hidden curriculum that's been well documented throughout the world, and particularly in the United States literature and so on in many different journals, was certainly present in Calgary. And then 2008 happened, and that's when, though, we had a lot of things change. We had some champions, including our dean, a non-family doctor, who empowered us, and the government also came on board with recognizing that things were a problem, and we needed more people to be in family medicine to have a sustainable healthcare system. And that's when I was happy to come to a place that had the resources and the mandate, and together we've been able to do a lot of good things. And so, though the Canadian average definitely continued to go up with the career choice, we were able to shoot from one of the lowest, the second lowest in the country, to the second or third highest in the country by this past year. And we're sort of like waiting to hear the current match results, which will be out, in not too long from now. So here's some rules that we're going to talk to you about on how to actually do this. Now, this presentation is going to be live. The actual video will be on the STFM website, and the presentation itself, with the "and" fixed, will be uploaded to the conference app. So rule number one, have a focused strategy. This is absolutely critical. Now, it's critical to any good initiative you want to do and have good outcomes, is have a good strategy. But there's some nuances in this. And particularly, you want to have as part of your strategy illuminating the specialty of family medicine. But never should it be about convincing. Ever. And the reason why is that what we've learned at now 2 schools is that, if you just tell the story of family medicine well, do your job well, do great teaching, show your enthusiasm and your passion for it, the students can see that and make up their own minds. If you try to convince a student of anything, they will think you're desperate and scared, and they'll actually kind of not like the idea of being convinced. I only have to tell them once, hey, you might want to think about family medicine as a career, and after that, I just tell a good story, do good teaching, hopefully, and then they make their own decisions. And that's been pretty much a standard thing that we've been told different times, that you've got, with all of our evaluation, you've got a good strategy. You don't try to convince us of anything. You let us make up our own minds. You've got a great product to sell here in the United States. As people have said, family medicine is the kind of doctor they wanted to be when they entered medicine. So let them make up that decision themselves. Just make sure they have the information to do it. Rule number 2, be lean. Be outrageously lean. So the title is talking about pipelines, as building the pipeline. And why? Well, if you take the analogy, and for full disclosure, I do actually happen to own shares in both trains and pipeline companies. But, so it's funny, that wasn't on the STFM disclosure list, but have you ever in your life had money ever from a drug insurance company? But anyways, but here we are talking about trains and pipelines. So if you're going to, and the debate about whether or not you want to transport oil by land is a different issue, but if you're going to transport oil by land, by far, we know that trains are 7 times more carbon intensive than pipelines, and they're dangerous. The community of Lac-Mégantic in Quebec, in Canada, a year and a half ago, was half destroyed, and a whole bunch of people died because of a train accident where the handbrakes weren't set properly. And it's a dangerous way to do things. It's heavy infrastructure and so on. And if we take that analogy, pipelines are in fact quite lean. Some smart engineers sometimes said, well, if you're going to do this, there's got to be a better way than doing it by train. And this is actually fairly old technology. And so similarly for your projects in family medicine, there can be the big way to do things, take on massive courses with lots of teaching hours, but maybe you can get almost the same job done in a very lean way. And so you'll do this for two different types of things: your own family medicine projects and events, and Trojan horse stuff. So the first is where you decide as a Department of Family Medicine to launch some sort of program or something or other. And I would really encourage you to think, what's the best way to do it? What's the absolute minimum? And let's do it just above the minimum. Always high quality, but just above the minimum. Because it's kind of like medication drug therapy for hypertension. If you take a little bit of a bunch of different drugs, you're going to get better management than boosting one drug to its absolute maximum dose, because that's when you get all the side effects. And it's sort of similar. You want to have a bunch of small effective interventions will probably be better off and more sustainable than if you really focus on one big thing that takes all your energy and prevents you from doing other things. Now, the Trojan horse stuff is very lean. That's where there's another course or program already at your medical school, and you can insert a family medicine option into that. And we've heard lots of examples at this conference and other MSEs about that. Those are very clever, because somebody else is taking care of program evaluation. Somebody else is taking care of a lot of the scheduling, a lot of the promotion, and so on, and you in family medicine just have to create a great family medicine experience within this other course. So at Calgary, we've got a bunch of sort of lean stuff. We've got Med Zero, a single day at the start of medical school before students enter med school and get exposed to the hidden curriculum. 94% of students are now going, by their own choice, to med school a day early to attend Med Zero because it's been so great. And this immunizes people against the hidden curriculum. And then this immunization is reinforced through a very lean model of the family medicine clinical experience courses. It's kind of funny they're called courses. It straddles 2 academic years, so they have to be called 2 different courses. But between them, it's 7 half days. That's it. But it's enough. It's enough. And by doing 7 half days only, we are able to get 160-odd preceptors so that there's one-on-one experiences for medical students in clinics. Next, we have this Family Medicine Medical Student Research Development Program that's getting launched this year, where there's a research program already at the med school, and we're creating a family medicine route within that. Again, as a Trojan horse, we're using somebody else's structure to have a family medicine theme. And then, because there's been here and there the occasional lecture that we couldn't find somebody to do, who can teach mouth? Then I'd say, I can. I'm a family doc, I can teach that. And then who can teach, migraine in the community? I can teach that, and so on. Over time, because we've been filling in little gaps, there's now a very visible family medicine lecture series within and throughout the entire MD curriculum in every course except for endocrinology/nephrology. That's the one that's a bit stuck. But I'm on it. I'm really working hard to get diabetes in the community in there, because it's already taught, but not by a family doc. And so by this lean intervention, we're able to have a fairly mature now look at all these different programs. We're all over the map. We've got something for everybody. Rule number 3, this is going to sound odd. Invest in the success of your residency program. Now, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was a Prime Minister of Canada. He had 15 years in office spanning the late 60s to the early 80s. In talking to the Ottawa Press Club about being Canada next to the United States, he said, living next to the USA is in some ways like sleeping with an elephant. No matter how friendly and temperate the beast, one is affected by every twitch and grunt. Your economy is 10 times the size of Canada, your population is 10 times the size of Canada. We have the biggest 2-nation trade relationship in the world, and yet we are a dwarf compared to the economic size of the United States by a factor of 10. Well, you know what? The same analogy holds for undergrad or predoctoral and postgrad in your departments. And so, no matter how great your ideas in the predoctoral or MD curriculum domain are, medical student engagement, whatever your ideas are, if postgrad is having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, or a bad year, it's going to get in your way. It's going to make it hard for other faculty members to devote themselves to undergrad because they know they're the only ones who are responsible for family medicine residency but at least there's a whole medical school looking after the MD curriculum. And so it may feel sometimes a bit bitter, and you know, I used to be sometimes bitter that maybe I would have big resources for undergrad, but then they might get scooped in some ways or reallocated towards a postgrad problem, and I would be very frustrated. But I've kind of come to realize that, well, people can't really focus easily on your MD curriculum initiatives unless the postgrad, the residency program is working well. And also, if the residency program has problems, the med students hear about it. And so it's going to get in the way. It doesn't matter what good a story I'm telling about family medicine, if they see unhappy family medicine residents and there's issues, weirdo issues with accreditation, the students will hear, and that's going to destroy your credibility about what you're trying to talk about. So you, as a pre-doctoral director, has to actually share in the ownership of postgrad or residency problems, GME problems, and help make sure they're successful. And you just got to accept that and move on. Rule number 4 is leveraging your learners. So leverage your learners, and at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Fehr.
I am the chief labor, so I'm representing, I see a few others in the audience. Just wanting to acknowledge that there's a superb group of mentors and teachers here in the audience, so humbly we just bring you some of the lessons learned from collaborating over the past 4 years to stimulate some discussion, knowing that there's lots of expertise in this audience on this topic. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about key relationships. My relationship with Dr. Keegan has been a huge key for me in my medical education over the last 4 years. And really, I'm just a sample of learners that Dr. Keegan has mentored. I cannot tell you how many times I've been at some kind of event and I'm chatting with someone who's also very keen about family medicine, has great ideas, and we get talking about our projects, and lo and behold, it turns out that their project was also mentored by the same Dr. David Keegan. So I'm just really a sample of one of these key relationships that he has. So some ideas about what your learners are going to bring to the table for you. It's a combination really oftentimes of ideas and skills. So I'm a former high school teacher. I came to the table of medical education with a lot of skills myself from my former training. I remember sitting in lectures thinking to myself, I just sat through an hour with 100 slides and I can't believe that they didn't even tell me what I needed to know. And I got thinking to myself, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just have more family docs in the curriculum who would actually come in and say, you know, here's the information, but here's what really matters. Here's what you're really going to see with patients. And I just had this kind of strong feeling about this. And I managed to turn that into a research project that helped both the department and myself, using both my ideas and my skills from my former training. Another thing that we found as we were working together is your learners can really be an ear to the ground. So I remember coming into Dr. Keegan's office and talking about my ideas and saying, you know, one other thing that I've noticed, and I have to be honest with you, you have all these great programs to recruit people to family medicine, but I'm already recruited. I love family med. I came into medical school wanting to be a family doctor, and to be honest, I feel a little left out. And that was really news to him. He was like, what? You feel left out? We're not doing anything for you. I was like, yeah, you know, you have all these great dinners saying, you know, like family med is, you know, we were illuminating family med, talking about stories of family med, but I really felt left out. So really, your learners can tell you a lot of things that you didn't otherwise know. We also have a real fire in our belly. So there's certain learners, you know, that come into medical school and they have a passion, they have ideas, they want to contribute. And so you can really capitalize on the energy of those individuals to drive programs forward. Yeah, and to just, you know, well, in addition to providing free labor. And really, are you using us if we want to be used? I don't know. So who are the kind of learners that you're looking for? For this, I suggest you consider your family med keeners. So you know the type. They're sitting in the small group, they raise their arm, and they say, you know what, I understand why we're prescribing this medication, but I really feel like we're failing to recognize the psychosocial issues in this case. And I suspect that there may be a few of just those learners sitting around the tables here. One thing to recognize is that we really are looking for a chance to shine. There's lots of learners in your programs that are really just looking for an opportunity to show what they can do. In my case, I got about halfway through my first year, and you know, there was all this talk all of a sudden of CARMs, and I was like, oh my God, I thought I was so relaxed. I got into medical school, that's so great, and then I realized I actually have to match to residency as well. I had 2 small children. My husband had a small business very close to where we lived. My kids were already in school. It just dawned on me one day that if I didn't match to the residency program in Calgary doing family medicine, I was going to have to move away from my kids. And you know, I had a real drive to do something special and unique. I have lots of passion, but I had a real reason to try and make my mark in the medical school. And there's lots and lots of students who have that same drive for a variety of different reasons. So there's lots of people looking for a chance to shine. And you can capitalize on that. So you just want to take the combination of a student's passion and providing them with an opportunity. That's what we felt has worked best for us. So ways that you can make this happen. So a big part of it is just being approachable. I remember thinking, you know, once I had this aha moment of really wanting to do something, and I remember thinking back, I was like, yeah, I remember there was that really tall family doc with the happy hair. I was like, who is that guy? Oh yeah, Dr. Keegan. So, you know, you really have to be approachable, right? So students have to know who you are. When they have these big ideas and they want to come see you, you have to be around. And so you know, he'd done a lot of, like he talked about, he does a lot of lectures in our classes. So I knew who he was. And then when I sent him an email, he was available to meet with, and he was more than happy. And that basically set the ball rolling that led us here today. So some ideas of things that you might work on. There's obviously a lot of you know about involving students in your projects. There's been a ton of great presentations at the conference. Other things, one thing that we do in Calgary is Dr. Keegan's opened up a lot of spaces for learners on the committees, which has been awesome. It's a great opportunity for us to participate in medical education, but it's also a great, you know, you basically have someone at the table as you're thinking about your program. You know, we're thinking about doing this, you know, and you can do surveys and you can get a lot of feedback in formal ways, but it's awesome to have a learner at the table who just says, yeah, you know what, guys, I don't think that's going to work, and here's why. And there's lots of times when we've experienced that. So it's great having learners on your committees, and it's a win-win for both of you. Really, in terms of research, I mean, I think we all know some schools have a formal program for research where they're required to do research. Learners are great to involve in your research. Part of it is a residency thing. You know, a lot of us have heard to get into residency, I should really do research, so there's part of a drive around that. But I think another important aspect to consider is that there's a lot of learners, such as myself, who really are looking to kind of dip their toe in the pool and get a feel of academic family medicine. I have an interest in pursuing academic family medicine, and a lot of students do, but we kind of want to get a feeling for what that's like, and often being part of these mentored projects is a really good way for us to do that. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. Something that's come to us as an added bonus that we didn't really think about at the beginning was that our collaboration has really enabled us to build a real pipeline of learners. So it sort of happened by accident. With one of my projects, I said, you know, I really need some help, and I kind of got thinking, maybe I could use a medical student in the year below me who has more time than I do as a clerk. So it's kind of for selfish motives. But it's blossomed into this really beautiful thing where, you know, I do work with a number of students on my research projects, but I've also been able to mentor them in various ways through that. And through my family medicine teaching nights, you know, we've created a whole pipeline of learners now in all different levels of training. Now I'm an R1, and I work with students in all different levels of medical school, formally and informally, on research and in various projects. So there's a beautiful way of creating a real pipeline of learners when you involve them in all these various things. It really does, and it's very interesting. It really feels like a community of professional learners. Like we're together, we're working together around these topics, and it's really a neat and interesting thing. And we feel like this is really important to nurture this community because we are the future leaders of family medicine. So these are just some photos of 4 of the medical students who were here with us at the conference. The first 2 are 2 brilliant young ladies who were working on my family medicine resident teaching night. Jaren's one of the scholars who came, and another student there. I wasn't personally mentoring, but another colleague of mine was mentoring her in part of our pipeline of learners as well. Yeah, so I'll hand it back to Stephen.
Okay. Happy hair, that's what that's called, eh? Now I have a name for that. Alrighty, rule number 5, embrace the complexity of being a pre-doctoral family medicine director. This is where we get into, in the little blurb, I was talking about all these different conceptual frameworks and so on. Being being a pre-doctoral family medicine director, as we all know, means that you are voluntarily going to put yourself into a role where you're accountable to a department head, but your zone of activity is in somebody else's domain, your undergraduate dean, your MD dean, or whomever, where you may not have a clear mandate, or your mandate from that person is small, your mandate from this person's big, but they expect you to impact it over here. Oh, and by the way, over here, there's a whole bunch of other people who want to increase curricular time, increase curricular exposure, and are used to things being a certain way and maybe don't want them to change. And they're not necessarily signed on to Family Medicine for America's Health, and maybe, in fact, they might actually be opposed to some aspects of Family Medicine for America's Health. And so you're voluntarily going into an area where you have minimal control, there's lots of complexity, there's lots of different political forces and so on, and yikes, it may actually be, I think, the hardest job in the Department of Family Medicine, to be a pre-doctoral director. You know, I'm not trying to slight anybody else, but if you're a residency director, you know, the ACGME has very clear standards and accreditation expectations, you know. That's very clear. If you're a research director, there's a large, you know, experience with how to be a research director in family medicine and other disciplines, and there's rules about grants and so on. But trying to effect a cultural change that's pro-family medicine, embraces and celebrates family medicine at an institution like where we heard Wayne Altman yesterday talk about it being the most medically specialized part of America, you know, that's more, like the ACGME doesn't have a document on how to do that. But the good news is the business world does. And so you can go to the business world and get business training and, you know, get the Harvard Business Review on a regular basis. And I find there's about 3 to 4 good articles a year come out of that are really relevant to me and I take things from. The influencer model of how to make change happen is amazing. There's other things you can do though too. The most important one, Lana talked about just building relationships with the department and the undergrad director in particular. And sorry, just to be clear, undergrad equals pre-doctoral. So the person who's in charge of family medicine at the medical student interface. But I have to build a relationship with my undergrad dean. So the person, the associate or assistant dean who's in charge of medical education, the MD program at your school, I have to really build a relationship with that person, with their assistant deans, with other course chairs, with the program management, you know, the general manager for the MD curriculum, and so on. That's what I'm all about. And how do you do that? The best way is you help out with big MD curriculum challenges. So whether or not they have anything to do with family medicine and your overall goals. So there's a big, difficult challenge with the way we're collecting student evaluations of programs. You say, I'd like to be part of that, even though it might seem to be the furthest thing from family medicine. But it's because by taking on the thorny, difficult challenges that people usually run away from, over a few years, you become a trusted member of the team. Your undergrad dean starts to think of you as, wow, there's this person on my team that I don't even have to pay for. They have the time and the energy and the skill to do these things, and that's awesome. And that comes in handy later when you start to say, hey, have you ever thought about how our school is meeting the social accountability to provide a sustainable healthcare system that's primary care oriented? And what's the MD curriculum's role in that? Then when you ask that question 2 or 3 years later, you'll have somebody actually listen to you because you're a trusted member. You've helped them. You've been part of the team. You need to develop advanced skills. We probably already know this. I use crucial conversations on a daily basis in my undergrad director role. Clearly a fan. I wish I made money from the numbers of people I refer to crucial conversations. I make 0, but it's awesome. The book is good and the workshop is great. I use it on a regular basis to diffuse scenarios where somebody makes outlandish claims about how bad family medicine is or why in the world are we doing this with family medicine, to also helping to bring difficult conversations and difficult problems to light. I use it all the time. Next, having some good financial skills is handy. You never know when a big thorny financial issue comes up, and there's not many medical educators who have good organizational financial management skills. And when you can jump in and help with that, you are taking a big hassle off the shoulders of your MD associate dean. And you need good medical education skills. So many of us find ourselves, I did, in charge of a large educational portfolio without formal training in med ed. And it did hamper me. And so I went to the Harvard Macy Institute and did the program for educators in the health professions. That was amazing. I learned a lot, and I've since been doing my master's at the University of Illinois at Chicago. But do what you can. At the least, read David Kern's book on curriculum development for medical educators. At the very least, make sure you know that book cover to cover, because you cannot afford to be the face of family medicine on every committee or within your group be on every committee like Wayne Altman described, and not be familiar with the language and the style and the design and the processes and the methods of how to do medical education at an advanced level. So no matter what, if you've got nothing and you're truly fresh, David Kern, Curriculum Development for Medical Educators, volume or edition number 2 is a key place to start. And then you got to get your team ready and do some internal work. We've done workshops here at STFM in the past, and maybe again next year, on some specific things on how to get ready to pounce on opportunities. But opportunities will always come. You just have to be ready to pounce. And you can do some strategic work internally, start doing good work within your department, thinking who might be good for different things, so that when an opportunity comes, you've already got people you can call upon to help out. And you really want to situate yourself cognitively as a family medicine consultant for the MD program, because that's where opportunities will come. That the MD program, if there's any issue related to primary care, whether it's a content issue of like sore throat or headache, or whether it's a process issue on how do we incorporate the patient-centered clinical model and patient context and all that stuff, they automatically think of you. Or if it's a larger issue, strategic issue of the curriculum, they say automatically, well, we're not going to do strategic planning for our MD program without getting our family medicine consultant involved. So this is what you got to do. You got to work on that relationship. Now, to do that, there's 2 other things you need to do. First, you need to convince somebody at some point, and this is where convincing is allowed. Somehow, you have to get senior management support for your portfolio. Dr. Mariana Hofmeister is a PhD herself. If she can stand up for a second and make herself known. There she is, Mariana. Thanks, Mariana. She has made my life and the life of our clerkship director and deputy clerkship director so much easier, because we've got now a senior manager who's dyed in the wool in medical education, and then a lot of the logistics, she takes care of making sure they get done. So I no longer am double checking that rooms are booked for this event. I'm no longer double checking that we have the right amount of suture materials for our workshop, and so on and so on. It really, really changes things up. And by having somebody truly senior, it really means that they bring a different perspective. Her own background happens to be communications, which helps us with different other things too. And she's a partner in a variety of scholarly projects and a co-author, and it's great. And it's freed us to do other things, because without senior administrative support, eventually the infrastructure management of your existing programs grinds you to a halt, and you cannot take on any one more thing without the whole thing just falling apart. And that comes quickly. It's like a doubling rate, and you don't notice it until it's about to happen, when you're frozen with all the logistics, all the submissions, all the reports you have to submit, and it all just grinds to a halt. You're jammed, and you're thinking like, oh my God, I'm overcommitted, and I can't deliver on our next little mandate. And then the other key thing, which is easy to say, hard to do, is get unallocated time. So I would recommend that if you're at a school which has one person being the pre-doctoral and clerkship director, that's not a good model for success. Because the clerkship is so big enough on its own, managing all the medical students who flow through family medicine clerkship, it's too big. That it means that you don't have the time to be available when an outstanding student hunts you down and says, I really think we need to work on the nurturing aspect of the mission of family medicine for medical students. I was able to say, okay, I can do that, because I have like about 0.2 to 0.3 of my time is just duties as undergrad director. And that's okay, because it gets filled. But because it's not taken up and already scheduled for a whole bunch of other things, I have that flexibility. This is key. And I would suggest this is a place to start with your department head, so that you probably need a total of 0.4 of your time to be an undergrad director if you're truly going to lead a cultural change at your medical school. so that you can be on every committee, be where it counts, be involved in things that counts. If you're going to lead that change, you need a clerkship director at your side, and the two of you together will do a lot of great things, and you need a senior other person if your department's trying to see Family Medicine for America's Health come to life. That's what you need. One person cannot do it on their own. Okay? Now, there's one note of caution I'm going to tell you. Rule number 8, prepare for the backlash. We heard Mac talk about the tectonic plates coming together. They have come together at Calgary. When you see this sort of stuff happening at that upper right-hand corner, things start to get uncomfortable for other people. Really, if you look at it, if we're empathetic with our patients all the time, so let's be empathetic to people who've been working in subspecialty areas where they have been used to the fact that everybody has assumed that being a subspecialist is, of course, a superior thing to being a generalist specialist. So they've lived in that culture. They probably entered med school, trained, and worked their entire career in that culture where being a subspecialist is the pinnacle of achievement in medicine. And we now know, we've got all sorts of data. Equally smart people go into family medicine as other fields. We've got outcome data on our equivalent of the USMLEs to show that, and so on. We've got equal number of PhDs going to family medicine as other places, and so on. It's all equal. It's nothing to do about smartness. But if you've lived in that environment and accepted that you have a superiority in the world, and maybe you yourself were one of the people who actually said to people, you're too smart to go into family medicine. Oh, going to family medicine is a waste of your talents. Or the kind of person who gave lectures where case after case is a family doctor making a stupid, obvious, critical error, and they swooped in to save the day. I mean, we all know, this is not me making this up, there's a large literature saying that this all happens. So if you've been part of that, and then suddenly, 5 years from now, the Family Medicine for America's Health is catching ground, and 30%, 35%, 40% of people are choosing family medicine as their first choice of career, your world has changed. And though it was probably not the right world anyways, and it was not the right way to be, their world has changed. And so we have to be better in many ways. We have to rise above the baits. We have to be calm. We have to leverage crucial conversations all the time to negotiate through bizarre things get lobbed in our way. And it's not everybody. I've got outstanding specialist colleagues. My wife is an academic specialist in pediatrics, and so there's a lot of outstandingly great specialists and subspecialists who are champions for family medicine and are frustrated as much as you are in this room that America has a poor orientation away from family medicine. But there are definitely some other people who are in that same zone of not seeing the relevance and importance of primary care. So how do you help them? Well, you start now. You start thinking, what if we were successful? What can we do at our school so that in 3 or 4 years' time, people can say, yeah, family medicine has been really successful, and at the same time, they've been part of the team at our school. They have been part of helping other specialties, other departments thrive too. So one of the things we've been working on is trying to build a culture of generalists at our medical school. And coming up this fall, we're hosting the Calgary Conference on Generalist Medical Education. And it's going to be all about fostering the development of generalists in specialty fields. The generalist surgeon, the generalist obstetrician, the generalist pediatrician, the generalist psychiatrist, and the generalist internist, who are a little bit orphaned. And sometimes we think in family we're fighting the Goliath. Sometimes the generalist specialist is fighting the subspecialty Goliath in their own departments. And they're lonelier than we are sometimes. So if we can help them at the same time as we're trying to do good things for family medicine, illuminate it and nurture it, and help bring our health human resources in line with our societal needs, and we're doing that other stuff, helping the med school, helping the other departments at the same time, I think it'll help mitigate the backlash that you'll see. Because instead of people getting mad at us, they might say, but they are helping us, and then they might say, what can we learn from family medicine? What can family medicine teach us about how to nurture the people interested in your fields? What can family medicine teach us about how to properly illuminate our our career path so that the right people are finding their way to us, instead of being mad at you. And so, here are the big 8. Have a focused strategy. Likely something about illumination, but also nurturing. I've seen at STFM, and I saw it in ourselves, people tend to pick one or the other, but it's both. Next, be lean, be efficient. Go for a great high-quality implementation at a small level and do a bunch of those things. 3, invest and own residency program success. Feel a personal responsibility to make sure your residency program is successful. 4, leverage your learners. You cannot do the full job without drawing upon them. And what's more beautiful, you build the pipeline well, I could disappear and things will be okay because we've got high-level support with Mariana and others, but our pipeline of learners, they own resident teaching nights. Not me, not the Department of Family Medicine. They own it. And the other projects that they're handing off, they own the Calgary Guide to Understanding Pathophysiology and so on. And so all these things are now medical student learner owned, supported by the Department of Family Medicine. But because we've leveraged them, they've got sustainability written all over them. Next, embrace the predoctoral complexity. Train yourself up so that you will be ready for the bizarre, complex issues that always land at the doors, at the feet of your MD associate dean. Next, get senior management support. It will set you free. Get unallocated time so you can invest in the magical things, the things that sparkle and shine when you have the time to work on them. It's incredible. And last, prepare for the backlash, but really it's more prepare for success. You know, it's a really weird thing being at a place where I've now heard for 3 or 4 years, people come to me and say, I want to be successful, competitive enough to get into family medicine. People are now saying, the medical students at our school saying family medicine is the new plastic surgery. And there's a whole bunch of lessons learned on what that is, and some good and some strange, some weird and challenging, which might be a focus of maybe a presentation I'll submit for next year. But prepare for that and know it's coming, because family medicine is too good a field with too much medicine awesomeness about it, where you're engaging with your patients. We all know it, we love it. You get to know your patients over the long term, do outstanding medicine, evidence-based, focused at the patient in front of you. You can see their health over the horizon. It's too awesome not to sell itself. So Family Medicine for America's Health doesn't have an if it will be successful. It will be. Your job is to stick handle it, good Canadian analogy, stick handle it to success so that you get the least cross-checks along the way, you get that puck in the net, and you make it happen. Thanks very much.